Hi, I'm Andrew Flusci, your Virginia traffic and misdemeanor defense attorney. Today, let's talk about your duties if you're involved in an accident. One thing that many drivers are not clear about is what you're supposed to do if you're involved in an accident in a motor vehicle. Virginia law is basically very clear, and I would imagine that it's very similar, if not the same, in most states. If you're involved in an accident and there's any damage, you'd have to stop at the scene of the accident. You need to exchange information with the other driver, and in Virginia you do have to call the police. Now, there could be an argument to be made in some cases if there's really no visible damage that you don't need to call the police, because arguably if there's no damage, then an accident really didn't happen. You know, just a touching is not necessarily police aren't necessarily required. However, if there's any damage, if any of the parties say, well, look, there's a scratch, you should call the police. The problem is that if you think, okay, there was nothing, and you just go on to work, and that other person says, no, there's damage to my car, and they call the police, now you absolutely could be charged with leaving the scene of an accident. Depending upon the amount of the damage, that could be a pretty minor charge, but it's still a misdemeanor. If there's significant damage, it's a felony charge. And if there's any personal injury involved, it's a felony charge to leave the scene of an accident. So it's a very serious thing. Now, so that's a case where if there's multiple people involved, like you hit another car while driving down the road. What if you were to strike a mailbox or something? That's the kind of thing that happens. You strike a fence post, run off the road. In that case, you're supposed to stop at the scene of the accident. You're supposed to try to look for the owner of the property, whether it's a parked car or a mailbox or whatever. And then if, after you've diligently looked for the owner, you can't find them, you're supposed to leave a note at the scene of the accident with your information on it. And then you're supposed to call the police within 24 hours. So that's exactly your duties. Now, if you find the owner of the property and if they say everything's fine and you take care of things, you might not need to call the police in that scenario. However, you definitely need to make sure that you do your responsibilities when you're involved in an accident. So under no circumstances can you just keep on going. Can you say, hey, are you okay? And if they say yes, just keep on going. That's not the way Virginia law works. You need to stop at the scene of an accident, exchange information at the very least, and then if there is any damage, you really need to call the police to protect yourself more than anything. So that's really your duties in Virginia. So be sure if you're involved in an accident, do what you're supposed to do, because you don't want to get a hit and run charge or leaving the scene of an accident, because at the very least it's a misdemeanor. The most minor one is for hitting unattended property with damage less than a few $100s. That would be just a class 4 misdemeanor. However, it's still a crime, and you don't want to have to worry about going to court to fight off a misdemeanor charge. So if you're involved in an accident and you have questions, or if you're charged with hit and run, definitely contact me so we can talk about it.